Greetings, friends around the world. This is Dr. Bob Thiel for the Bible News Prophecy channel. Eliminate the $100 bill or the 500 euro note, or both, or all large currency? Is that something that should be done? Are there any personal ramifications of this? Are there any prophetic ramifications? Is this actually being proposed? Seriously being proposed? Well, certainly it is being proposed. I'd like to read something from Harvard economist Larry Summers, who wrote, "It's time to go after big money." And he wants to start doing so by banning the $100 bill. But critics say he and other globalist elites have an ulterior motive for getting rid of such things. Anyway, Larry Summers was the former U.S. Treasury Secretary and Chief Economist of the World Bank. And he's put an article out explaining why he thought the 500 euro note and a $100 bill should be eliminated. He's a member of the Trilateralist Commission, founded by David Rockefeller in 1971, also with Zygmunt Brzezinski. He argues in certain circles the 500 euro note is known as the Bin Laden, and says that's why it shouldn't be printed. It shouldn't be printed, he said, because it's used by terrorists and that kind of a thing. And he further says a moratorium on printing new high denomination notes would make the world a better place. So getting rid of high currency notes is supposed to make the world a better place. In terms of unilateral steps, the most important by far is the European Union. He talked about getting rid of the 500 euro note. But Patrick Wood, who's an Arizona-based economist, said eliminate the $100 bill has little to do with fighting terrorism or crime, but everything to do with chipping away on the availability of cash. Woods says there's a big portion of society that's not included in the banking system. They just don't have banking accounts. They operate on cash, and that's a large percentage of the developing world, even in America. A lot of people on welfare, they go around the first of every month cashing checks. They don't have access to accounts, and apparently that's something that bugs the global elite. And J.P. Morgan Chase announced recently that they were going to limit how much cash people could take out to $1,000 a day. Now, I find it interesting that Larry Summers says getting rid of high denomination notes makes the world a better place. The United States used to have $500 bills, $1,000 bills, $5,000 bills, $10,000 bills, and in 1934 they actually came up with a $100,000 gold currency note. It was a currency bill, looked like everything else. But in the late 1960s, as the United States was starting to have problems keeping enough gold to make their dollar convertible into it, they got rid of those high denomination notes. But you think about this. In 1934, the United States had a $100,000 bill. $100,000 was worth, I don't know, compared to modern times, I don't know, 10, 20 times, I didn't look it up, but a lot more money than it is today. And now they're saying, oh, we have to get rid of the $100 bill to make the world a better place. To me, that seems a bit odd. Now, last month on the radio, I heard calls for the United States to get rid of its $100 bill, as well as a 500 euro note, in order to fight terrorism. Basically, they say that the $100 bill is small enough that if you get enough of them together, terrorists and drug dealers can move this stuff around, and therefore we need to do something about it. Something I find interesting or odd is decades ago the United States said to fight I think tax evasion or drug dealers, I think it was drug dealers, the one they actually claimed it was going to stop, is you had to declare if you had moved more than $10,000 in or out of the United States. Well, 3 or 4 decades ago, whenever that number came out, there weren't too many people with that kind of money. And you say, well, you don't have that kind of money now. Well, for people who travel, etc., sometimes they are talking about that kind of money, and they've not increased the amount. So every year, as the dollar is worth a little bit less, people are getting closer and closer to these thresholds where they have to declare this stuff to the government. Now, what I find interesting about this is that a lot of people don't want to get rid of cash. They find it convenient. But whether or not the United States gets rid of the $100 bill, one thing that's interesting is on the current $100 bill, the newest one, there's kind of this plastic strip over in the middle of it. Why it's there, I'm presuming, is to reduce counterfeiting. But it made me wonder when it came out a few years ago if perhaps what will happen is, instead of getting rid of the $100 bill initially, what the United States might do is to put some kind of a tracking device in there. Just some computer code or something that could make it so they can find money anytime they want. And maybe that will be a step before they would ever eliminate the currency. Now we'll see. Now, it's not just in the United States that people are talking about getting rid of these notes. Over in Europe, again, Larry Summers said they should get rid of the 500 euro note, but you've got some of the Scandinavian countries that are looking at getting rid of cash. And I read something on April 16th, 2016 that says South Korea is planning on phasing out its paper currency by the year 2020, which isn't that far from now. We're moving more and more toward some kind of a cashless society, and other countries in Asia are also looking at reducing at least their larger denomination bills. You say, well, so what? Well, a lot of globalists want to eliminate cash. Well, why, and why should you care? I'd like to read something that Sarah Leong wrote in a publication called The Atlantic. So let me read this. This is from April of 2016. In a cashless society, the cash has been converted into numbers, into signals, into electronic currents. In short, information replaces cash. Information is lightning quick. It crosses cities, states, national borders at the twinkling of an eye. It passes through many kinds of devices, flowing from phone to phone, computer to computer, rather than being sealed away in those silent marble temples we call banks. Information never jangles uncomfortably in your pocket, I guess like change. But whenever information gathers and flows, two predators follow closely behind it: censorship and surveillance. The case of digital money is no exception. Where money becomes a series of signals, it can be censored. Where money becomes information, it will inform on you. A cashless society promises a world of limitation, control, and surveillance, all of which the poorest Americans already have in abundance, of course. For the most vulnerable, the cashless society offers nothing substantially new, only extends the reach of existing paternal bureaucratic state. And let me finish what she wrote, I guess. The poor may be disparately impacted, but the cashless society affects everyone. And so relatively privileged techno-libertarians have long feared the cashless society, seeing it as an electronic panacea on one of a host of privacy erosions introduced by the digital age. Well, let's think about this for a second. They're talking about getting rid of the $100 bill. Some societies right now, like South Korea and some in apparently Scandinavia, are looking at getting rid of cash. Some other countries are talking about it as well. I think one in South America is talking about doing that as well. If you eliminate cash and money becomes information, it can be censored and monitored. Now, you might not think it matters what magazines or books you go and buy and read, but it might to somebody at some point in time. Maybe you say, well, right now, in theory, you can be, if you're on the internet, the government can monitor you. That's true. But there's one thing, somebody who inadvertently goes to a website and looks up something. Many people go to websites that they don't agree with. And it's true, you could buy a book you don't agree with, but to actually go out and buy a book is more of an indication that you agree with a subject or more want to learn more about a particular subject. What if that's a subject somebody in the government doesn't like? Now you've got internet monitoring, but taking it a step further, when you're going into monitoring of cash, there are bank people who can look at what you're doing, people in the financial world, various government entities will know. And perhaps you're going to buy books that people don't like. Maybe books like this one. Within certain circles of the U.S. government, some believe that if you really believe this book, the Bible, you're an extremist and a potential terrorist. I am not kidding. So you might think you've got nothing to worry about if the government's going to do this surveillance and turn all your currency electronic. Maybe you don't. But maybe you do. Maybe some movie you go to pay to see, maybe it's got political overtones, and maybe the political overtones are not in accordance with what some in the government might like. Now, what Sarah Leong wrote in The Atlantic reminds me of a prophecy from Revelation chapter 13. So let's read this here, starting in verse 16. It says, "He causes all, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of the name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it's the number of a man. His number is 666. While it'll be a European power that's going to fulfill that particular prophecy, technology from the United States, or at least the United States has encouraged the development of, will likely be a factor. Until the 21st century, it wasn't possible to monitor everybody's buying and selling. Now, you can't do it yet in 2016 while I'm doing this particular video, but we're getting to the point where it could happen. Governments are looking at going completely cashless. And once they go completely cashless, they will be able to monitor your buying and selling. And you'll notice from Revelation 13, unless you have the mark of the beast, which indicates you're going along with a particular political power that the Bible says don't go along with, you're not going to be able to buy or sell. We're nearing a time of more massive financial monitoring. Now, on a related note, I saw something in Japan that they're going to start testing in the summer of 2016. It's going to test a system where foreign visitors can verify their identities and buy things just from their fingerprints. And they're hoping that this will help prevent crime, plus people won't have to convert their currencies and this kind of stuff. And so we're already seeing something where there'll be something on your hand in order to try to buy and sell. And of course, fingerprint money is something that'll clearly be tracked. Now, well, this is not the end. What I mean by that, we're not in the Great Tribulation. Jesus warned about a time called the beginning of sorrows in Matthew 24, verses 4 through 8. And I believe we're in that time. This is a time that precedes the Great Tribulation, which is discussed, for example, by Jesus in Matthew 24, verse 21. While we're not there yet, we're getting closer and closer to a time where they will be able to monitor buying and selling. Will the United States get rid of that $100 bill? Perhaps, perhaps not. Whether it does or not, the fact that they're looking at going to cashless societies and more use of electronic currencies, and the fact that they can now put in ways to read money. They can put stuff in money where they could track it through computers or some other things. Just paper currency, which is technically made out of cotton. But paper currency, we're getting closer. So those who wonder about this book, consider that when this book was written, and the portion I read in Revelation chapter 13 was written, which is over 1900 years ago, they had no technology that could possibly monitor buying or selling. We're getting closer to that time, in the time of the Great Tribulation, the time your Bible was warned about. This is Dr. Bob Thiel for the Bible News Prophecy Channel.